They thought a mailbox was just a mailbox, but by the end of that morning, it would expose a shocking secret about my neighbor, drag the cops into my driveway, and turn the entire cul-de-sac upside down. I was standing in my slippers, coffee still warm in my hands, when a deafening crunch ripped through the quiet of the street. At the end of my driveway, my brand new, hand-painted mailbox lay in ruins. The post split like kindling. The metal door crumpled beyond recognition. And standing over the wreckage, grinning like he'd just won the lottery, was Karen's teenage son. "Hey!" I shouted, running toward him. "What did you just do?" He shrugged, lazily spinning a baseball bat between his hands. "It was an accident," he said, in that maddening, careless tone that made my blood boil. "And?" I demanded. My security camera had already told the story, 2 swings, perfectly aimed, like he was auditioning for the Little League Finals. Before I could even start questioning him, Karen appeared power-walking across the lawn in her leopard print robe, every step radiating authority, like a general marching into battle. "Excuse me," she barked, hands on hips. "Why are you yelling at my son?" I pointed at the shredded mailbox. "Because he destroyed my property." Karen tilted her head, scoffing. "Your property? That mailbox is actually on our land, so technically, it's our problem." I blinked. "Come again?" Dragging her slipper through the gravel, she smirked. "The property line runs right here." "That mailbox? On our side." "He didn't destroy your mailbox, he destroyed his own." I stared, coffee trembling in my hand. My mailbox, my morning piece, was in pieces. And Karen was rewriting property law in her driveway. I held up my phone. "Karen, I have footage of your son swinging at my mailbox." "It's on camera." She crossed her arms. "Then show it to the police. I'm sure they'll agree with me." 20 minutes later, the police cruiser rolled up. I was ready, video cued. Karen and her son whispered on the driveway like co-conspirators, oblivious to what was about to hit them. The officer stepped out. Karen pounced. "Officer! My neighbor here is harassing my son over something that doesn't even belong to him." Calm and collected, the officer raised an eyebrow. "All right, let's start from the top. Ma'am, what exactly happened?" I pressed play. On the screen, crystal clear, her son winding up like a pro and smashing my mailbox into pieces twice before laughing and walking off. The officer's jaw tightened. "That doesn't look accidental to me." Karen leaned in, eyes blazing. "But that's our mailbox. It's on our property. He can't vandalize something that's technically his." I could feel it in my gut. The moment had arrived when this mailbox would spark a battle no one in the neighborhood would forget. How far would someone go to rewrite reality, and could a single orange stake in the grass decide the fate of a family feud? The officer scanned us both, notepad in hand. "Where's your property line?" he asked, voice calm but firm. Karen strutted to the edge of the lawn, jabbing her slippered foot at the ground. "Right here," she said, chest puffed out. "We had it surveyed years ago." "Years ago," I repeated, incredulous. "I had it surveyed last summer when we repaved the driveway." "The stake is right there." I pointed to a tiny orange marker barely peeking out of the grass, just 2 feet behind where my mailbox had stood. The officer crouched, examining the pin. "That's a survey marker," he confirmed. "Which means this area, including where the mailbox stood, belongs to you." Karen's face flushed crimson. "That can't be right. That company didn't know what they were doing." The officer straightened. "Ma'am, I can check county records if you'd like, but right now, this clearly supports your neighbor's claim." He turned to her son. "Did you hit this mailbox?" The kid kicked at the gravel, muttering, "Yeah, but she said it was fine." Karen snapped, eyes blazing. "Don't you dare throw me under the bus. I told you to practice in the yard, not." Her words died as the officer began jotting something down. "All right," he said slowly, "this looks like intentional property damage. We'll file a report. You'll both need to sign." Karen's jaw dropped. "You're filing a report for a mailbox?" The officer nodded. Yes, ma'am. For a destroyed mailbox on private property. It's a federal offense. Her face paled, the word federal hanging over her like a dark storm cloud. And just like that, the power shifted. By the next morning, the neighborhood had already exploded with gossip. Somehow, everyone knew Karen's son had smashed my mailbox, the cops had been involved, and Karen had tried and failed to bend the law to her will. The cul-de-sac group chat was ablaze. Karen, of course, wasn't backing down. I woke up to an envelope taped to my door, a printed letter in Comic Sans, threatening legal action for any attempt to harass or defame her family. It was signed, sincerely, the true property owners of 214 Maple Drive. I laughed out loud. She was doubling down on the lie. Later that afternoon, the officer handling the case called. Hey, he said, we verified your survey through the county. You were right. The mailbox is definitely on your land. That was satisfying, but then he added, almost casually, we also had to notify the Postal Service, since this involves destruction of mail property. They take that very seriously. Oh, Karen wasn't going to like that. Sure enough, an hour later, I heard shouting outside. I peeked through the window. A postal inspector, older, uniformed, authoritative, stood beside the same officer from before. Karen was in the middle, arms flailing, voice climbing with each word. You can't just threaten my son with federal charges, she yelled. He's a minor. The inspector's tone was calm but unshakable. Ma'am, federal property is federal property. We don't care how old someone is. We just need accountability. Her son lingered behind her, quietly scuffing the curb. I stepped outside, camera in hand, not to escalate, but to make sure everything stayed documented. The officer gave me a small, almost reassuring nod. And that's when I realized this mailbox fight was no longer about wooden paint. It had become a full-blown legal storm, and Karen had no idea what was about to hit her. What happens when a single mailbox becomes the battlefield for pride, power, and the law, and how one quiet act finally set the record straight? Ma'am, the inspector said, voice steady, since your son admitted to destroying the mailbox, we'll need either payment for replacement or we'll proceed with charges. It's that simple. Karen spun toward me, eyes narrowed, jaw tight. You're really going to do this, she spat. Over a stupid mailbox? I shrugged, calm. It's not about the mailbox anymore, Karen. It's about taking responsibility. Her glare trembled with frustration. Then, in a burst of misplaced confidence, she shouted, Fine. I'll see you in court. I'll prove it's our land. The officer sighed. You can try, ma'am. But the paperwork says otherwise. And just like that, as she stormed back to her house, every neighbor watching from their driveways knew Karen's argument had officially collapsed. A week of eerie silence followed. Her curtains stayed drawn. Her son was nowhere to be seen. The occasional slam of a door, the muffled sound of an argument through the hedges, those were the only signs of life next door. Then, one bright Saturday morning, a truck rolled into her driveway. 2 workers hopped out carrying a brand new mailbox, the exact same model as mine. I sipped coffee on my porch, watching as they installed it neatly at the edge of my property line. Not hers. It was perfect. 10 minutes later, Karen marched over, trying to look composed but still red-faced. There, she said sharply, not meeting my eyes. Happy the mailbox has been replaced? I nodded. Appreciate it. She crossed her arms, waiting for me to gloat. When I didn't, she fidgeted. For the record, she muttered, I still think the survey is wrong. I smiled politely. Then you might want to take that up with the county. She glared for a moment, then stormed back home. This time, not a word more. Later that day, the officer called. She agreed to pay for the damages, he said. The Postal Service won't pursue anything further as long as it's settled. Justice served. Quietly. Firmly. Without yelling. Without revenge. That evening, I walked to the end of my driveway and looked at the mailbox gleaming in the golden sunset. It wasn't about wood or metal anymore. It was about boundaries, literal and moral. Karen had crossed a line, and she had learned the hard way that being loud doesn't make you right. Her son, I saw him a few days later, quietly mowing the lawn. He waved awkwardly. I waved back. Maybe he'd learned something too. And I realized something important: standing your ground doesn't mean starting a fight. It means refusing to back down when the truth is on your side. The mailbox stood as a reminder, strong, centered, exactly where it belonged. Because no matter how loud a Karen gets, facts, like property lines, don't move. Subscribe to see how standing your ground can turn the tables on those who think they're untouchable. Then like the video if watching the truth quietly reclaim its place felt satisfying.